Well, we're just hours after the Democratic primary here in Virginia, and helping us break down all things Virginia politics is Larry Sabato of Sabato's Crystal Ball at the University of Virginia's Center for Politics. Larry, thank you so much for a couple minutes. I know it's been a busy night for you and your staff. First, I wanted to touch and ask about the lieutenant governor's race last night. So the AP has not officially called this race yet, but we know that the other candidates have conceded and congratulated State Senator Ghazala Hashmi on her nomination. Let's talk about what was her path to victory, and what have we learned, and how do we characterize former Richmond Mayor's LeVar Stoney's performance in his own city? Was that surprising to you?
All right, first of all, you had almost a three-way tie, including State Senator Aaron Rouse. It could have gone to any one of the three candidates: Hashmi, who won, Stoney, who was a close second, and Rouse, who was a very close third. There were six candidates, but only three of them really made a difference, made a splash in the campaign. Look, Rouse did so well on his first statewide go that he's already being talked about, at least among Democrats, as a possible nominee for the 2nd District congressional seat that comes up next year. The incumbent there is Jen Kiggins, a Republican. I have no idea whether he's interested. But I have heard this repeatedly last night and this morning. If you're in touch with him, you might want to ask, because that would be a very interesting contest. And 2026 as the midterm election for Donald Trump, given Trump's unpopularity in Virginia, might be a good opportunity for Rouse. What else did you want? Oh, you want to talk about Stoney? Look, I do pre-election checks with a lot of people to get a sense of what they think is going to happen. And on Stoney, even in the Richmond area, I did have a few people say to me he might have trouble carrying his city of Richmond. I had no one say to me he's going to be smashed in the city where he was just mayor for 8 years. He barely got a fifth of the vote in Richmond, and it made all the difference. Had he gotten a normal friends and neighbors vote, he would be the nominee right now, but he didn't. Hashmi did far better. She got 58% in Stoney's own city, and that made all the difference. It made her the nominee and potentially a nominee for higher office in the future.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the voting trends. I know I didn't send this in my email to you, but let's talk a little bit about early voting trends. We know that there was basically a trend that early voting for this statewide election compared to 2021 was a lot higher. But it also seems to not have carried over into Election Day voting. Is that true from what you can process from what we saw last night? And how did that play into how the votes ended up shaking out for all the elections?
Look, when all's said and done, about 500,000 people voted, which is very good for a primary. Go back 4 years when Terry McAuliffe was being renominated for governor. 500,000 voted. It's almost identical to the primary in 2021. So yes, I would call it normal. The reason you had a higher pre-election day turnout, both absentee and early voting, is because Democrats actually prefer that kind of voting. Republicans often do not, but Democrats do. And so this makes sense. I think over time, you're going to see, in big elections anyway, an increase in the early and absentee voting. I mean, it is more convenient for people, and particularly for older people who may have mobility problems. It solves the difficulty of getting to and from the polls.
So former Norfolk delegate Jay Jones is the Democratic nominee for Attorney General. He was vying for that seat a couple years ago. He did not win the primary, but this time he did. He'll go against Jason Miyares. What can we expect from each of these candidates campaign-wise in the next couple of months? And I am curious, in a race like Attorney General, is this typically a position where people tend to vote party line, or because of just the nature of the job, people treat it a little bit independently? What do we know about this race upcoming?
Recently, there has been virtually no variation between the vote for governor and lieutenant governor and attorney general. 4 years ago, there was only 1% variation from top to bottom, 1%. In the old days, the decades I grew up in Norfolk and and additional decades, the average variance was 17 percentage points. You had people voting back and forth, Democrat and Republican back and forth. Many people would pride themselves on voting for at least one Democrat, at least one Republican. That's dead and gone. Why? We live in very partisan times, very partisan times. And the vast majority of voters have taken a side, and they stick with their party from the top of the ballot to the bottom of the ballot. So Jason Miyares is the incumbent, which means Jay Jones has a tough race automatically against an incumbent. But go back 4 years, Miyares beat the Democratic incumbent. How? He had coattails from Youngkin. They were all close. All three races were extremely close. But coattail made the difference for lieutenant governor and attorney general. Now, I don't know for sure that that will happen in November, but I sure see a trend. We have a chart coming out in just a few minutes online that shows how it's changed. There was even 1 year where there was 26 percentage points difference between and among the votes for governor, lieutenant governor, and attorney general. That is dead and gone. We are very divided. That may be unfortunate, but it's a reality on Election Day.
Larry, I've got one more question for you. So right now we have already seen joint statements, sort of a unification of the Democratic ticket, statements from party leaders and basically all three candidates on the Democratic side saying, hey, this is the ticket, let's go. Do you think that this forces the Republican ticket to appear together after what we know has been a bit of a chaotic, to say the least, start for the GOP leading up to this primary?
Democrats have the greatest unifier in modern times for them, and the unifier's name is Donald Trump. So even Democrats who voted for other candidates in the primary or may not have voted at all, you'll see them in November voting a straight Democratic ticket in the vast majority of cases. For Republicans, though, it's different. Now, they're all more or less behind Donald Trump, even though in Virginia, he's not as popular. He's not nearly as popular as he is in other places. But they can't disagree with him, because to disagree with Donald Trump is to guarantee defections on your side come November. Now, that is at present not a very unified ticket. I think Winsome Earl Sears and Jason Miyares are unified, but it's the middle position, John Reed for lieutenant governor. I'm not getting into the scandal aspect of it, but clearly there is a lack of unity so far on that ticket. I don't believe they have ever appeared together as a ticket. And you're going to see the Democrats over the next few days go to locality after locality after locality in Virginia as a team. That's an advantage for the Democrats. It's a disadvantage for the Republicans. However, politicians turn on a dime. We all know that. So it only takes, one day and one rally to turn that factor around for the Republicans.
Again, that is Larry Sabato of Sabato's Crystal Ball at the University of Virginia. Larry, thanks you so much. I know it's been a busy night for you and your folks, but hopefully you get some rest, and I guess we could do this again in a couple months. Thank you again.
There we go. Thanks, Alex. I enjoyed it. Appreciate your responsiveness.